I think it can be motivating to have your coach not be so far ahead of you. I think in the coaching realm, if you're, miles and miles apart from where your client is in that journey, maybe the relatability piece is missing.
Our ever-changing world calls upon the most courageous, resilient, and relentless of us to face its most extraordinary challenges. To help you embark on this journey, we present the Impactful Coaching Podcast, your oasis for inspiration and a beacon to spark the fires of greatness within you. I'm Joseph. I will be your ally in this journey to empower your potential. Join us each week as we dive deep into the heart of ambition, drive, and success to unravel compelling stories of daring leaders who dreamed, struggled, and achieved victory. Our journey begins now. How is everybody doing today? This is the Impactful Coaching Podcast. My name is Joseph, web media expert. I'm not just the guy. I'm one of, I'm sure, multiple people who work with professionals such as you to understand and use web media to the best of your ability. And I'm here to host the podcast, which is an honor and a privilege. And I'm here with Sarah Powell of Maclynn International, formerly known as Vita. Sarah Powell is going to be continuing a discussion that I am thrilled to have in the world of dating. So this is dating conversation number 3. First of all, before we do question 1, question 0, question -1 is, Sarah, how are you doing today? How are you feeling?
I'm feeling good. Thank you. I have a little bit of a residual cough, so sorry if you hear that, but I'm excited nonetheless to dive into it today.
I don't have a residual cough, but like my congestion just calmed down after the last couple of days. I'm just going to get this out of my system because I got my second round of COVID earlier on in the week. And here's the thing is that like everybody feels bad, right? Which I appreciate. But then I thought, something, if this was just a cold, no one would care for me to take time off. But I told all my other clients that I've got COVID and be like, oh man, I'm so sorry. I just rest. Let you know, like one of my clients is a Marine. Former Marine. And again, if I tell him I'm very cold, do you think he would accept that as an answer? But I tell him I got COVID. He's like, 10-4, little buddy, get some rest, good to go. So I was just like, for me, it's been like a vacation. So might as well make the most of it. So
I'm glad you're feeling better.
Well, thank you for that. And so far, I wouldn't have guessed that you've got a residual cough, but we'll see what magic I can pull off in editing. A lot of the guests that we talked to on the program, we meet for the first time on the program because everyone is busy, but we did have the luxury of having a little bit of time to plan out what we wanted to talk about. And one thing that came up in preparation was a bit of a misunderstanding that I think we can actually use as an opportunity to clarify for today. So I referred to the business as a platform, and it's not that, it's an agency. But what I think would be really helpful is to hear from you why is this distinction so important, and what have been some of the misconceptions with the work that you do?
Thank you for bringing that up early in the conversation, because so many people do think matchmaking and then they equate that with like an online dating platform, or that we're kind of have this online access or app that people can browse. However, we are actually a fully offline operating service. We have a network of people, but all of our service is more kind of one-on-one consulting type of matchmaking. And again, it's a big distinguishment. It's nothing that people can filter through themselves. All of the information is purely for the matchmaking team internally. It's kind of a night and day experience versus an online app, which we'll get into all the ins and outs of it, I think at some point today. But yes, thanks for clarifying. We're not a platform. It's a high-end service and agency.
Mm-hmm. Well, it had done me a favor as well, because it had never fully crystallized for me just exactly what makes a platform distinctly a platform. And the takeaway is that I would argue a platform is something where the users are responsible for their own satisfaction. So whether you're using Facebook or you're using a dating app or a public forum or like YouTube, which a video platform, hence the term there, it's all about the user self-curating the experience while the algorithm is trying to learn that, understand that, and get the user closer to their preferred consistent experience. And so that right there, I think, is what makes a platform distinct from a lot of, well, definitely an agency,
Yeah,
very clear distinction because you're doing the curating, you're doing the work.
yes,
And so
that's exactly right.
as a tradition on the program, now I'm not going to tell my dating story. Excuse me. I'm not going to tell my dating story. Again, I've done it twice so far, and I can only refine this down to the point where it starts to get a little farcical. But would you be interested to share your dating history, and in what way did it have an impact on the work you're doing today in the dating field?
Yeah, sure, sure. It's funny because I think actually the inverse happened in this situation where my professional work helped develop my own personal awareness and improved my relationships. So it's kind of a funny journey where I first got into matchmaking through Ikigai, if you're familiar with those exercises on purpose. So I got into matchmaking. I was actually single at the time when I was pursuing this field, helping others navigate compatibility. Then you have to kind of look inward, and I am challenging myself that I also should be more mindful of my own dating, of course, like practice what you preach, walk the walk. And so at Maclynn, we are here emphasizing the importance of values, long-term relationship goals, lifestyles, and that's what we are looking for when we're looking at matches. So I had to reflect on my own dating experiences, and I had not been focusing on that alignment. You kind of mold yourself to other people's lifestyles. So yeah, basically I had to think about what are the patterns that I'm experiencing. And it wasn't that I had trouble getting interest. That's not my problem or other some of my clients' problems or building connections. Like I felt like I was good at dating, but it's about the long lasting outcome. So I wasn't finding compatible people. When I was able to then focus better on my values, I was able to identify a partner. I'm happily in a relationship for a long time now. And so I can say with certainty those matchmaking methods that Maclynn emphasizes, they actually do work.
This has been as far as I can recall, what the inverse is not something that I've heard about so far. It's usually been some prior experience with dating. Has what it did was build that authority in it by saying, well, I had successful dating, so now I was able to take my knowledge and share it with others, which I think is also some pretty consistent through line with other people in their fields as well. So it is interesting to hear about that inverse. And so I'll give you one follow-up question, and then we want to learn more about how your agency works. I was like, the platform word was right there. It's like, come on, let me out, let me out, let me out. Was there a tension between your ability to work confidently in the field relative to your experience? Did you feel like you had to have certain personal accomplishments first before you could transmute that into professional accomplishments?
Yeah, that's a fair question. If you're a matchmaker, how are you matching people, but you're single? I think really, which we'll get into as well, is that our firm or agency has psychology expertise.
Mm,
So you can still provide guidance and advice and help make compatible matches to people because that's a separate party, and we're still able to advise and assess compatibility without myself being involved in the relationship. And I had previous skill sets in psychology as well as in executive recruiting, and that kind of bleeds into the field of matchmaking. So I have the skill sets to be a matchmaker, and then later on to advise about dating. There are many dating coaches out there that are single themselves and kind of working through their own development and breaking their patterns. And as they're growing, they're educating and sharing their story to help encourage other people and inspire other people. And then along the way, you develop a relationship, and then that's kind of where I've been in the field close to 4 years now,
mm,
so it was a pretty quick evolvement. I think and hopefully other people in their field don't feel like they have to be perfect to
mm.
be an expert. You can still be on the journey alongside your clients. I think it can be motivating to have your coach not be so far ahead of you. I think in the coaching realm, if you're, miles and miles apart from where your client is in that journey, maybe the relatability piece is missing and you won't necessarily get to connect as well. So having been single myself more recently, I have experienced the apps where if there's colleagues out there who are matchmakers that have been married for years and years and they've never even seen or been on an app, then there creates a little bit of a gap.
That's an excellent point, and I can see that being true in a number of fields and in a number of industries. Just like the first thing that comes into my mind is cooking. Wanting to learn from like the top tier chefs, the Michelin star chefs would be great, but for one, there's the time value component, but then there's also being able to really absorb what someone is saying when the fundamentals aren't there, the basics are there. So learning along those lines is a much more, I think, clear and practical path for everyone involved. So I think, and that's something that, and I'll say this, and then we'll move on to the methodology question, which is the meat and potatoes of today's episode. But one of the previous episodes that I had with Cole Fink, he talked to me into realizing that my particular experience wasn't going to be a detriment to my future goals, just because I had a preconceived idea of what I had to have in order to meet those goals. So to contextualize this in the world of writing, there's obviously a lot of people who read like hundreds upon hundreds of books. I've probably read about like 45 so far, but I've also racked up a lot of hours in film and in television and in gaming, which has evolved as a storytelling medium.
Right.
And in fact is eclipsed as a storytelling medium because of the interactivity involved in storytelling rather than always being a passive observer. And so you take all of this experience that is unique and you can either throw it all away and start from scratch, or you can say this experience is what is particularly valuable about me in this space. And so a willingness to celebrate our experience so far, regardless of what shape it has taken, is way more valuable than expecting to adhere to the pre-established norms because, well, they're already there. You don't need to service that because that service has already been completed. So that's a takeaway from that. That's really stuck with me even to this day.
Perfect. Yeah, I agree.
So let's talk about the 5-stage methodology. And I'm especially fascinated to hear about how the psychology is worked into this because it's not something that I studied in school, but I think it's one of those parts of the human experience that we are all building up experience for. Hence what I've just said about all of our experience can be useful in different ways. So take us through it. And if it's especially helpful, would also love to hear about, say, how it was developed, if there were early iterations of it. And I will follow up. Because it's 5 stages, I'm not planning on having 5 follow-ups for each stage, but I will, of course, follow up with where things stick out to me in particular.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. One of our favorite topics. This is, again, like you said, the foundation of everything that we do. So our founder, Rachel Vita Maclynn, she's a chartered psychologist in the UK. So it's her namesake. And she wanted to build a different kind of matchmaking company that would use psychology and kind of follow a value-driven, more inclusive approach. Actually, over 50% of our team have a psychology degree or higher, bachelor's, master's. I think even one of our coaches has her PhD. So that's quite fascinating in relationship psychology. But the process has been kind of curated by the team over the last decade with our clients top of mind. And this 5-stage framework or matchmaking methodology, I'll just kind of go through those stages and feel free to ask your questions. But the first stage is knowing yourself. Just like you spoke about earlier, it's really having greater insight about your experiences. Who are you? What are your core values? And when you kind of peel back the layers and know what your values are, you start to realize all of those values have impacted your decision making and ultimately your relationships. Many people kind of skip ahead and they just think about, I'm single, it's them, but they haven't taken the time to look inward, and that's essential. And that's why that's the first stage in our matchmaking approach. The second stage is describing the right person for you. So now once you have a better intake of who you are, then you're in a better position to start thinking about who are they? what qualities should I be seeking in a partner that are compatible with me? And surprisingly, those qualities are reflections of your core values. So that's again why you shouldn't be skipping ahead and thinking about, who your person is. You should be thinking about who am I and who is compatible with me. That's kind of a different frame or lens to see things in. And then the third stage is visualizing the relationship. And visualization is a very powerful tool. Essentially, this is goal setting. So, what does this ideal relationship look like? It's pretty complex dynamic now that it's you and another person's world colliding. So, a lot of considerations when we're not thinking about the goal and we're not defining who is this person, what will the relationship look like, we're a bit aimless. And so that can cause people to have troubles in identifying like who is the right person for them. So those are the first three stages. And that fourth stage is where the matchmaking comes into play, creating a plan and putting in motion. Many people lack strategy. So this is all about what are you going to be doing? There's this common notion, I don't know if it's just from rom-coms or what, the fairy tales we hear, just like locking eyes and across the room. So people just think it'll happen. They leave it to chance. But if your goal is to be in a relationship and you're just leaving a lot of things to chance, you're not empowering yourself. So here we are being proactive. As the matchmakers, we create the plan with you and we actually implement that plan. So it's a very step by step, partially who we know, partially kind of an executive search. So it's a lot of work that goes into it, but that's where the bulk of our matching service is about strategy. And then that fifth stage is dating mindfully with meaning and purpose. And here it takes both parties to make a successful match. There should be commitment from the client and from the matchmaker, and we empower them to, consider all the matches that we present, coach them, listen, and get the feedback and advise as they are dating. So it is a very rigorous, time consuming journey, but we find a lot of success, with our expertise and the individuals like own accountability and growth mindset. We've had amazing success. We've matched over thousands of singles.
The first thing that stuck out to me out of the 5 steps was the introspection part, which I don't want to create an avatar of the person just so that I can make my example stick. But I think introspection is a challenge for a lot of people. And trying to peel back some of those layers means encountering a lot of problems that may have been resolved, may have not been resolved. So how do you ensure that this person is being honest, and how can we distinguish the true honesty versus the put upon self-rationalization honesty that has actually functioned more as a barrier than an aid?
Right. I think as psychology-based professionals, we do have ways to probe and question and dive in deeper and kind of pull out where those struggles have been. And for the most part, we hope that someone would just be forthcoming and truthful as they're embarking on this, and not not only investing their finances but also their time and energy. You would hope that that level of investment means that they genuinely do want to be better in their relationships and get our expert support. There are plenty of matching services out there who will skim over all of this, and maybe that would be better suited for you if you didn't want to kind of expose yourself in that light, right? If you didn't want to peel back and be introspective. But I think that is why our clientele does really appreciate and find success, is because they're willing to do the work and they're willing to lean in to our expertise and kind of our psychology-based approach. So with that, how we're doing it, we have a compatibility wheel. It's kind of like those, it's often used in life coaching, talking about all the different segments of your life from your upbringing. Again, ding, ding, that's a big aspect of how we are attached in relationships, and they impact our love map, and all those experiences are heavily impact any interpersonal relationship. So unpacking the upbringing, your value systems and beliefs, your social environments, things you do for fun and fulfillment, finances, and then anything with past relationships. So there's so much to dive into that you can really understand and get to know this client so deeply. And oftentimes there might be takeaways where they're like, wow, I haven't like talked about that in a long time, or oh, I haven't really realized how that influenced my relationships in the past. And just really pulling back what people's core values are, they do change in time. So I think even though maybe you've done a values exercise 10 years ago, it's still valuable to reassess and see if those values remain true today.
And and then I guess I want to also hear about the reflection of that. So
Mhm.
based off the way the system works, and is it fair to call it a system, or is there like a
Yeah, methodology,
method? Yeah,
framework.
yeah. Um, where are people, I guess, struggling when it comes to trying to like create sort of the idea of who my ideal partner is?
Sure. There again, maybe there's external influences that you've always gone after a certain person because that was expectation in your family or your community, your culture. So maybe by default, people have been looking in the wrong place. Oftentimes, we are also quite limiting in terms of the criteria. So if you have a wish list, that's great to have, taken some learnings from previous partners and saying, this worked well, this didn't work well. I think it's great to be mindful of that, but to create hard, fast rules because of an experience, I would think is unfair to any future person that you meet, and kind of creating deal breakers or eliminating I dated a French guy and he was horrible to me. So no more French people. Like a whole category of people just wiped away in one go. I think when people come to us, it is our job as well to challenge them in their pre-existing criteria. So when there are clients that have really high expectations or very long lists, once we are able to kind of go through their background and say, okay, these are your values, and then now let's look at your list. Do some of these lists still ring true? Is this actually relevant at all? Does your partner have to be 6'5", or does her waist have to be, size 20, like whatever people, extremes, etc., or the narratives that they've told themselves. We're here to kind of politely say, does this actually impact your happiness? Like, will that make someone a good partner? So just again, bringing in more personal awareness to who they are, and what they're looking for. Um, the first three stages of knowing yourself and your partner and your relationship, it might evolve a little bit as we go through the matching journey. So it's not like your criteria has to be set in stone when you're working together or in your own dating journey. I think again, it's good to have clarity, but not to be rigid. Have some flexibility on your criteria, and see what works and doesn't work. It's a safe space to explore in our service or through our agency. So I think that gives people a lot of comfort to get out of their traditional type, I
Mm-hmm.
guess, and lean into, all right, if you guys think that they're compatible on all these different levels, maybe he wouldn't be my typical person, or she might not be someone I swipe on, but let me give it a go through you guys. Those are one things about helping kind of carefully communicate and be respectful. It's fine for someone to have a preference. I'm not saying you're right or wrong for having a preference, but maybe we can challenge any bias. or pull out the underlying why. Why is that important to you? And if you're able to articulate that in a meaningful way, amazing. Then that helps everyone. It helps yourself and it helps us when we're
Hmm.
trying to match you.
Well, I'd love to give a personal example from that, and I have a reputation for giving weird examples, but it's gonna work. It's gonna work. So, I'm a gigantic nerd, and the Legend of Zelda series has always been one of my main gaming series. And it's not just about them making lights and hitting things over the head with a sword. There is a deeper emotional story about these characters who have bonded at a spiritual level, and they keep reincarnating and they keep crossing each other's paths over and over again. And so there is a lot of depth to it. And so for me, the series is not just important for the blinking lights, it's important because I resonate with it on an emotional level. And so that would have been a criteria for quite a while for me. My girlfriend of now 5 years was not a fan of the series, and that was not a deal breaker for me. I think a younger, more hot-headed version of me probably would have had that as a deal breaker, but it certainly wasn't for me now. But what ended up happening was, because she and I are both actors as well, she got booked for a Zelda commercial. So she actually got to do the Zelda commercial, and she wanted to understand the game a little bit better. So she ends up playing one of the games, and I'm like talking her through certain parts of it, but not a lot, because she's like, "No, I want to explore it on my own. Get out of the room." So I'm like, okay. And so she ended up becoming a fan of the series just by coincidence. And so I think having that criteria is, even if those action items aren't quote unquote met, the future is still unwritten. So there is a lot that can change, and that I think being with somebody else in that long-term commitment can actually increase the probability of us both adhering more slightly or more majorly to each other's ideals. I mean, I've certainly changed to her preference over the course of 5 years, and likewise she has as well. So I would never want to just like straight up abandon a criteria, but I think it's also important to understand that like what's best for us might not reflect what we wrote down.
Yeah, I think it's like you don't need to have someone that's a carbon copy of you. You do want
Yeah, I wouldn't
someone
want that.
that right. I think some people might be like, yes, that's amazing to have someone that wants to do all the same things, all think, view, speak the same way. It's probably not the reality. I think you just have to respect each other's differences. And yeah, if you truly, value someone, then it's very likely you'll pick up some of their habits organically.
Have you ever had a situation where someone says, "You know what? I don't want this. I don't want to make a list of my ideal partner. Can you just make a list for me of what you think? Because you must know me at this point. So what would you like? Have you ever just like, okay, here's what we think your ideal partner would look like? Have you ever had to do anything like that?
There are some people who just feel frustrated that, well, whatever I'm doing hasn't worked in the past. So just tell me what I should be doing. It can be challenging, there is one side of it that it's great to be open-minded and have a clean slate and just explore. But generally that just means it'll take a bit more time to refine as we go. So that's okay not to have all the answers right away. There is a natural learning that's involved in dating and relationships. As long as we can understand, yeah, who are you and what are your values, then it almost kind of illuminates who we should be looking for anyhow. So by default, if we're kind of following this methodology, we'll have a generally decent idea of who could be compatible.
Hmm.
And then now it's just kind of fitting the pieces of attraction and, lifestyle and a few other bits that will be important to that individual
Hmm.
client. But yeah, there definitely are people who are just like, I'll leave it to you guys.
Yeah. So the last follow up that I had in regards to the 5-step framework is about the strategy. Now, one of the themes that we explored very early on in the program that we haven't explored too much lately, because these things they kind of come and go, is the tension between intentionality and organic. So let's just say, for an example, I go to a speed dating event. Obviously, I'm there with the intention on dating and meeting people who I might have a more prolonged date with afterwards. But it creates that veneer of having a goal when oftentimes being in that organic, free-flowing state is usually a better way to convey who we are. So where are the challenges with developing a strategy that I think is effective, but is not like over effective, where you're almost like more worried about adhering to the strategy and not letting the organic side of it actually manifest?
Part of strategy for us is just effort. There are many people who flat out lack time, therefore, it falls bottom of their priority list. And that's where a lot of people who are coming to kind of outsource the work, so to speak, it's because they flat out may not have time. So I think that is for us one thing that we often encounter is there's no strategy because they don't have a time in their day to even dedicate towards it. The other is that they're quite frustrated with their experience. So they might be approaching dating, but they're not in the right settings. They might be looking for the wrong people. So again, they're just kind of repeating patterns. And even though they're putting in work or putting in effort, the quality of what they're doing, could be reevaluated. So there's the strategy piece is us coming in, basically unlocking a whole new network of people that they've never had access to before. That already is a strategy, but also kind of going out on their behalf and being like an executive search where we can go and connect with people who are compatible based on, again, all the earlier planning. So here it's really just about someone coming in and taking time and being intentional for the client. So it saves them a lot of time and energy.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so in the space that we have, there are obviously a lot of ways that people can attempt dating. There's lots of apps. I myself have attempted to use OkCupid, attempted to use Twitter.
Tinder.
I mean, for all things considered, even Twitter at times, I thought maybe something would happen here. I remember like briefly wondering if LinkedIn was a good outlet too, because like, man, everybody looks really good in their headshots too. I'm like, okay, don't do this, not on LinkedIn. So that was a good call. But there's certainly a lot of options out there. And okay, so I can't formally ask this question unless I do a little bit of housekeeping in terms of, I think, the financial commitment. And I was about to wonder if there is a divide between, say, like blue collar workers versus white collar workers, but blue collar workers can earn quite a good living too. So I don't necessarily think lifestyle is the barrier, but if respectfully, what kind of financial commitment are you looking for people who are entering it?
Yeah, so our clients, I would say many of them would be considered high achievers. And so for us, that can manifest itself in a lot of different ways. We don't need to put a specific criteria there, but there is a level of investment. There's services of all spectrums. I think because of our level of expertise, our more international presence, that has allowed us to work and represent some of the most fascinating people out there. With us, there are kind of financial commitments, $20,000 plus. And that's not to say that, someone in themselves might not invest. It might be a family investment, or it might be, something they they're highly invested in personal development, so they save up to do something like this type of service. So there's people of all different backgrounds that they don't necessarily have to be multimillionaires, and that's not the exclusivity that we're seeking. I think it's more just about people that value long-term committed relationships. They value working with experts. They want access to an international network and a high level of service.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I appreciate that, and I do want to say too that the costs of being entering in a bad long-term relationship can rack up pretty substantially in their own rights too, especially if it ends up in a costly marriage and ends up in an even costlier divorce. So there are a lot of ways that this can become a pretty significant financial hit. So having that investment and having that intentionality can not only save incredible amounts of finances down the line, but can also save lives too while we're at it. So I definitely respect that part of it. But I wanted to ask that because I wanted to sort of confirm the avatar of the people who are working with the agency for this question, which I'm about to ask, which is, considering all of these dating apps that we mentioned, that there are a lot of options out there. Where I think there's a challenge with clientele is that because they're high achievers, you would think that there's a lot of appeal going for them on these platforms. So why are these not working for them? Is it just the high achievers just have to really work through this process? Because you would think like, oh, I got money, I got looks, I should be doing fine on Tinder. So I think it's created a pain point that has probably actually helped your business. But yeah, tell us about what is the relationship between what you do and how the rest of the dating world is, I don't know, in chaos, I guess.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. There's thousands of dating apps or platforms out there, and those kind of have normalized meeting someone on a third party. So I think that has paved the way for matchmaking in a sense, and a lot. But the struggle is that dating apps unanimously create frustration. People come to alternatives like matchmaking when they're frustrated, and or they're seeking something kind of a higher caliber. But what you're touching on is, okay, if there are a lot of these high achievers, why is it not working for them? Like I addressed earlier, a lot of people that are business owners, executives, or whatever top of their field, many have little time. So it could be that they have a volume of interest, but they don't have any energy to weed through potentials. Could be getting lots of hits online, but it's just at the end of the day, it's like, oh, last thing on their list to do. Can't even find time to swipe and engage on the apps. A lot of people, it's still a priority to them. They still think it's a very valuable aspect of their life that they want to achieve, but they just don't know how to go about it. So then they're going to seek out expert support, and they want the best to help find that and filter for them, essentially. Another interesting aspect for high achievers may be that the interest that they're yielding might not be after them for the right intentions. Maybe they're being sought after for the wrong reasons, for their status, their monetary gains, social climbing, whatnot. There's just a lot of superficiality out there online. So again, you can have kind of a trusted coach or matchmaker along your side, finding people that are a bit more genuine and again aligned on compatibility. I think many other high achievers have a challenge of finding people of a similar caliber. There's this kind of misconception that there's no other good ones out there. Again, people probably just don't know how to present themselves well online, or they're being discreet about it. I guess that's another point, is if we are working with someone who's high profile, they may not have the luxury of being on a public platform. So they need to utilize a more discreet method, and they appreciate kind of our professional offline experience. So that could be another challenge that people are navigating. But overall, yeah, there might not be the abundance that they're looking for. It might not be easily accessible on these platforms because truthfully, they have a low barrier to entry. So that could just be something, you don't know what people's intentions are. You don't really know the quality that they are. So if you're kind of looking to cut through those challenges, we take the legwork off our client's plate and also elevate the experience of meeting someone compatible. And yeah, hopefully that addressed it.
Yeah, well, I think it goes back to one of the things that we said right off the bat, which is that to use a platform means that it's it's self-inflicted satisfaction. So because someone has a lot of time to use on the platform, that almost becomes a detriment to a person's appeal. And I think the other answer that really stuck out to me too is that status is a positive, but it is also negative. And it's actually something that I encountered too with my first relationship that I actually wanted to bring up on the program is the first person that I dated worked at the cash register at a comic book slash Magic the Gathering shop that I frequented, and I was constantly having this debate inside my own head as to, okay, how much of this am I attracted to the person, and how much of this am I attracted to her status? Because dating the clerk at the local comic shop in Nerd World is pretty big, is a big deal. But that also comes with its own positive and negatives too, because obviously there's a lot of people competing for her attention, so there could be a lot of jealousy. There could be the relationship did not end amicably, not one bit, and so I sort of like had to distance myself from that world as a result of it. So we want to protect confidentiality with respect to what you stated, that a lot of these people are exceptionally discreet, and it is very important for them, which is also a fair point in of itself. So how do you ever have to deal with that, dealing with like people, whether they're like over attracted to status, or maybe they're not respecting status enough and not realizing what they're getting into? I think the concept of status is a really difficult area to navigate, because you have the person and you have the projection of the person based off of where they are contributing to society.
Sure. I think, yeah, attraction and status, that would be maybe a preferential of some of our clients, because if they are a certain caliber themselves, maybe they want an equal or higher caliber when they're utilizing our service. But the interplay, I think that's a delicate balance, because for us, again, once we've guided them through those stages, they've hopefully had a bit more introspection and consideration for their values, and will help them emphasize beyond those external factors of physical attraction and status. Again, what is the meaning behind someone that is high achieving, that is important to you? Maybe it's the level of ambition, and maybe that is really attractive to you, but there could be ambitious singles out there that aren't at the top of their chain, that those are the qualities you're attracted to, and maybe they could still be a great partner. So
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of massaging what status looks like and what could be attractive to someone, and representing it in a way that's still compelling to the client. And it's also something where attraction can grow. If fundamentally everything else is aligned, that can foster a great attraction as you grow. And I'll also say that being compatible with someone and being attracted to them isn't an either or. It can
Mm-hmm.
be both. It could be compatible and attractive to you. It doesn't mean that you have to choose one or the other. I think making that people think that there's a sacrifice need to be made, and that's not always true.
Right. Yeah.
You can find someone that's compatible and attractive to you.
Mm-hmm. It reminded me of this clip. I see it every like 8 months or so. It was from an old sitcom called News Radio. Pretty sure it was News Radio. And it was a bit where two characters who were both exceptionally like business minded were discussing terms of marriage. And it was the most like calculated, unromantic thing. Like,
Transactional.
yeah, so it's transactional. Yeah. So
Yeah.
what are your terms? Single, rich male seeks matrimony. How many hours did we spend together? 55 hours in aggregate, specifics to be determined later. Done. And they just kept going through it until like there was a deal breaker, and they says, well, it was a pleasure working with you. I hope you'll be fine. And it's, the joke being they were obviously made for each other, but because there was like a deal breaker. And I thought it was funny, but it made me think about the difficulty with romance, because one of the things that you mentioned earlier is that we get a certain idea of it based off of media and the romantic films, and that oftentimes that romance is the power that seems to like override all other powers. So you can have somebody who owns like a jewelry store in New York come in, I mean, anything you want, but then she goes to like visit her parents, and there's like a schlub whose job is like fixing fences or something like that. But he's just got it, right? He's got that X factor. In reality, do people have like top priorities other than romance? Like, is compatibility really its own game, or is there? I mean, at the end of the day, does love really prevail over all of it?
I think love is the motivator that helps kind of kickstart people, and inspires them to prioritize relationships, because they're seeking out that that end feeling, that end vision, where they're happily ever after with someone. And I
Mhm.
think that's a beautiful vision, and something that I don't think anyone would knock. And now it's just about, okay, how are we, what's the steps in between? And that's where we try to fill in those steps and help people kind of progress to that end vision. So for us, our clients are seeking committed monogamous relationships.
Mhm.
It could be the opposite, that they're driven by their loneliness. So it could just be that sparked. I think previously we had conversations about COVID,
Mhm.
um, but yeah, that during that time, heightened loneliness, and that kind of was maybe the kickstart that people needed. So the pervasion of loneliness or the seeking out of love, it's kind of the differing spectrums that kind of lands on partnership. And so what motivates people is, yeah, maybe they don't want to be alone, or they're really seeking this kind of like added life experience. So whatever way they're kind of coming to us, we would understand and peel that back again in that introspective piece on where they are and what's happened in their life, and kind of why is partnership, and why
Mhm.
is finding someone important to them, and it could be various reasons, but that seems to be the ultimate life goal for most
Mhm.
people.
And one thing that I wanted to say, just to add some more to this as well, is that the winning over the affection of somebody else, I think, is the core idea of romance. But I think there are other ways that it manifests. For me, nothing is more romantic than a couple who are already in love and are already a partner taking on the rest of the world. Like it's us two versus everybody else, and we're gonna make it. And I think that's a beautiful thing. I think when a couple have really formed a single unit and are so in sync that they feel unstoppable together. To me, I think that's like the most beautiful thing. And I think everyone. I'm again not an expert. I'm just a dude with this shocking amount of luck in this space. I would just encourage people to think that romance has a high degree of subjectivity to it, and that it can take on different shapes. And so I hope that people find the shape that it takes, and it's not just the one thing, which is just trying to win somebody's affection, because having to constantly like try to continue to win over someone's affection even long into the relationship is important. You never want to stop that. You never want to take it for granted. But I for one would also want to see an evolution of that too, and to see all of that energy manifest into a more outward facing impact on the rest of the world.
Yeah, I think that falls into the visualizing the relationship category, where we're defining, we want to be a power couple, kind of like
Yeah,
you were
exactly. That's the term. Yeah, that's the term. Yeah.
yeah.
Um, One other thing that I wanted to know about your agency. This is pretty important. I'm glad I got it in before we ran out of time. But because you emphasize working with clients in the long term capacity, can you tell us a little bit about what I guess post match made service is like? And do you say, is there counseling involved? Is there maintenance involved, and helping keeping a relationship healthy and compatible?
Yes, definitely. Well, yeah, it would be a shame to just say you're matched, goodbye
Yeah.
forever. We do offer a variety of services that help bring learning and growth to our clients at pretty much any stage, whether it's like pre-matchmaking and you just want to engage in kind of like a date coaching capacity. But if we're working with clients over the matchmaking journey through that five-step methodology, we are infusing date coaching through that experience. As they are dating, we are getting feedback from them and from the match, and kind of understanding and reflecting what could be better in our next experience, and what rings true and what resonates, what do we not like. So, kind of consistently giving guidance. But we also should be helping clients with the right advice. It's
Hmm.
not always the easy advice, kind of seeing them repeat patterns and having to kind of bring that to the discussion and help them date better as they're working through our journey. But on the later end of it as well, there will be relationship counseling once people are coupled up. And apart from that, we have more structured one-on-one coaching too. If there's like a particular topic or struggle pattern, again, that we want to address, we can kind of take that up to a different member of our Maclynn team that provides coaching. Some of those topics would be like effective communication, navigating conflict resolution, more like personal development or confidence building. We can even support people looking at their online dating profiles if they were still exploring different avenues for dating. But apart from that, we teach online workshops and we do digital master classes. So we're really big on helping empower people, whether you're utilizing our service one-on-one or, you just want to learn from the expert and date on your own accord.
Okay. I appreciate a lot of that. And what I'm just doing with the last few minutes is there's just a couple of other things that I wanted to understand about Maclynn in specific. So one thing that sticks out is that the past dating coaches that we've talked to were area specific. So one was New York, one was United Kingdom. Not to compare one city versus one country, but New York is a pretty big place. It's practically like its own contained country anyways, right? So I'd say they're about neck and neck. But the question says platform. Oh man, I forgot to edit it. So, but your agency does work with a lot of different countries, a lot of different regions. So what would you say have been some of the advantages and some of the drawbacks to, I guess, cross-cultural connections?
I think being international is one of our greatest like differentiators actually, and one of the biggest advantages. So we have, I'm in California, we have our New York partner and our London partners. So we do span the US and Europe. For us, I think that just allows us to work with clientele around the globe and support with a vast pool of matches. But we can also do coaching sessions that cover a lot of time zones.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But there's truth that there will be cross-cultural nuances. The fact that we have local teams in California, New York, and London, that allows us to kind of understand the microclimates of dating in those areas. Dating in the West Coast versus dating in East Coast, there are some kind of lifestyle differences or attitudes or demeanors. So yeah, there certainly are nuances, but having local experts to kind of help support them while still providing access outside of their immediate area. I think there's many people that there's a huge benefit to that. Your perfect partner might not be in your backyard. They might be, somewhere across the globe. The other difference is that to kind of counteract working with people outside of our main three areas, we also have ambassadors. And there's over 100 ambassadors, and they are kind of our Maclynn eyes and ears on the ground across cosmopolitan cities, primarily in the US, Europe, Asia, the Middle East, even down in Australia. We use ambassadors to kind of have their local knowledge and their networking capabilities, and then they can point us to singles anywhere in the world. So yeah, it's pretty exciting how wide we can reach. That's one of my favorite parts about our firm.
So you have to forgive me if I need to ask for something that was already answered clearly, but unfortunately I produce as well as I host the show, so I am distracted by blinking lights sometimes. But the ambassadors, are they oftentimes also people who have, say, found success and are continuing spreading the good word?
They could be. Yeah, I think that's an organic referral-based system, but they could also just be people who, in their own default, have an amazing network. They could be part of an alumni association. They could be part of like a Christian community or a hiking club. And, for whatever reason, it could be a compelling community to network with for our clients. And it could just be geography based, language based, religion based. So there's a lot of individuals who don't even have to be single themselves that are great networkers.
All right. Well, Sarah, I've only got one question left for you for today,
Sure.
which is what challenges is your every single question I wrote down this platform on it. Honest, Joseph, come on. What challenges is your agency facing on a day like today? And when I ask this question, it can be high-minded questions, but it could also be very granular, like, oh, we're worried about our ranking, we're worried about our social media presence, whatever that case may be. I'm curious to hear about it. And then the second is give yourself 5 years. What is the outlook for what you're up to and what Maclynn is up to?
Yeah. I mean, the main challenge will always be to adapt and grow as relationship trends and dating landscapes evolve. What relationships looked like 50 years ago to now have definitely changed. So, who knows what the future will look like, and we're going to have to adapt and modify. In addition to that, something that I think is currently impacting a lot of fields is AI.
Mm-hmm.
So technology with artificial intelligence, that is outskilling a few professions, but some will still require the human touch, especially emotionally based, like matters of the heart. Matchmaking and date coaching, they do need a bit more emotional analysis or using our ability to kind of communicate and pick up nuances that technology can't identify. So
Mm-hmm.
but it's not us against AI. I think we can certainly still implement some of these tools more efficiently, even just internally with the volume of data we have and the number of people we know. There's probably ways that we can utilize AI and just kind of improve our matching. And then the goal for our next 5 years, I'd say we want to continue to enhance, refine the service, deliver more advice to singles. So maybe it is growing our like social platforms to kind of bring and broadcast more dating expertise and attract people that want to be intentional, use kind of a psychology-based approach. And then on top of that, we're also looking to expand our physical offices too, and anytime in a more cosmopolitan area. So that's
Mm-hmm.
something we're always seeking opportunities for.
Fantastic. All right. Well, like I said, that was everything that I had planned for today. But as I don't know, I guess a matter of policy, I always offer the floor once more in case there was any other, say, thoughts or reactions or opinions that have been lingering in your head as a result of this conversation. So if there's anything else that you want to share, feel free. And then otherwise, let the audience know where they might be able to find you online.
I mean, I'm sure there's a million things that we could keep talking about, but yeah, I invite people to follow us at Maclynn International on Instagram. I'm XO Sarah Joe. You can also connect with us on LinkedIn and maybe even browse our website and kind of explore a bit more about membership options at MaclynnInternational.com and .us. So we have two platforms.
Okay. Outstanding. Well, everybody, this has been the Impactful Coaching Podcast. I've been Joseph. You can find Joseph space Ianni, Ianni. The reason why I'm emphasizing those N's is because I say it too fast. People think it's just an M, and then Joe Ianni comes at me. So that's me on LinkedIn if you want to reach out, have any questions in the media space. And then if you're interested in becoming involved in this podcast, you can email Joseph at impactfulcoachingpodcast.com. It is spelled the way you expect. And with that, thank you to everybody for your contribution to this program. It is an honor and privilege of me. And we want to ensure that whatever space you're in to help others, we want you to be as impactful as you can be.